Dr. Vivian Thorne didn't even try to whisper. 28 students heard every word. Jalen Brooks, the only black face in the room, heard it clearest of all. "Oh God, they actually put one in my class." She looked straight at him. "Look at you sitting there. Sitting there like you understand a single thing on that board. You belong in a remedial hall somewhere, not wasting my oxygen. Here, impossible math. The kind that requires an actual brain. It'll prove once and for all your kind was made for pushing brooms, not pushing numbers." She folded her arms, grinning, waiting for the humiliation. Jalen picked up his pencil. Moments later, Dr. Thorne looked at the page. Her grin died. What happened next destroyed her entire career. She had picked the wrong person to test. Before we get to what happened next, you need to understand where this took place and why nobody stopped it. Whitfield Preparatory Academy sat on the North Shore of Chicago, the kind of school where buildings carried the names of families who had held money so long they had forgotten where it came from. The parking lot looked like a luxury dealership. BMWs, Mercedes, the occasional Porsche just to show off. Hallways were polished marble. A Latin motto was carved above the front entrance. Framed portraits of alumni who became senators, CEOs, and federal judges lined the walls. Every inch of that school whispered the same message. You were either one of them, or you were trespassing. The crown jewel of Whitfield was the mathematics department. Years of state recognition, an AP calculus pass rate that sat at the very top. The best math program in Illinois, maybe the entire Midwest. All of it built by one woman, Dr. Vivian Thorne. She wasn't stupid. That was what made her dangerous. For many years she had taught, holding advanced degrees and recognition as a top educator. She created worksheets used in classrooms across the state. When parents toured Whitfield, admissions always walked them through her class first. She had earned her reputation. That part was real. But underneath lived something she never said where administrators could hear. She believed her program was excellent because of who was in it. And she believed Jalen Brooks, a black kid from the South Side on scholarship, was a threat to everything she had built. She never used slurs in emails. She never put anything in writing a lawyer could grab. Instead, she said things like this: "We need to be honest about preparation gaps. I refuse to lower my standards. That wouldn't be fair to students who earned their place. Some students need a different environment. No shame in that." You could hear those words and think they sounded almost reasonable, until you realized every single one was aimed at the same kid. The only kid who didn't look like the rest. Jalen Brooks arrived at Whitfield one morning in early fall. His grandmother, May, drove him in an old Honda Civic with a cracked taillight. She parked between a BMW and a Range Rover and didn't blink. Jalen wore the school blazer, brand new, bought on sale, one size too big. He carried a backpack and a composition notebook whose cover was peeling. That notebook went everywhere with him. Every class, every lunch break, every bus ride home. Here is what nobody at Whitfield knew about Jalen Brooks. While still very young, he taught himself calculus. Not from a tutor, not from a program. From a textbook he found at a library book sale for a small amount. The spine was cracked and someone had scribbled notes in the margins. He read it cover to cover in a short time, then read it again. Before long, he was solving problems on open math forums under an anonymous username, graduate-level problems, the kind that take PhD students an afternoon. Jalen solved them in his grandmother's kitchen between dinner and dishes, writing in that same composition notebook. His public school had no AP math, not even a functioning math club. When the district cut funding, Jalen lost the only class that challenged him. The Whitfield Scholarship was his only way forward. He took it knowing exactly what it meant. Walking into a building never designed for someone who looked like him. From the first day, Dr. Thorne made the rules clear, not with words, but with actions. She assigned Jalen the back corner seat, farthest from the board, closest to the door, like an afterthought she wanted easy to remove. She forgot to include him on the materials list more than once. When he scored high on the first quiz, she didn't congratulate him. She ran his paper through a plagiarism check. He was the only student she checked. When the results came back clean, she said nothing. She just handed it back face down, like it smelled. Every single day, Jalen sat in that back corner and did the work. He didn't complain. He didn't argue. He simply solved the problems, turned in the papers, and went home to his grandmother's kitchen. But something was coming, something Dr. Thorne had been planning for some time. Every year, Whitfield held open classroom day. The school's best teachers gave live demonstrations in Founders Hall before hundreds of seats filled with parents, board members, administrators, and every math student watching. It was Dr. Thorne's stage, her show, her proof that she was the best. This year she had a plan for Jalen Brooks. She just didn't know he had one too. In the weeks leading up to open classroom day, one morning in room 214, Dr. Thorne walked in carrying a stack of test papers. She placed them on her desk, straightened her glasses, and smiled at the class. That smile she used when she was about to enjoy something.
A weekly exam, 5 questions. Integration applications, you have half an hour.
She moved down the rows, handing out papers, one by one, the same white sheet for every student. Until she reached Jalen. She stopped, looked at him like she had just noticed something on the bottom of her shoe. "Oh, Jalen, I almost forgot about you. I made yours special." She pulled a separate sheet from her folder, different paper, different questions. She placed it on his desk slowly, deliberately, pressing it down with one finger like she was pinning a dead insect. Same 5 questions as everyone else. But I added a little something extra on number 5. A real challenge. My graduate school classmates couldn't solve it. I thought, since you seem to think you're above the regular curriculum, you should have something that matches your confidence. She leaned in close enough for only him to hear, though the front row caught every word. "Try not to cry when you get stuck." She turned and walked back to the front. The class went quiet. Not the normal test-taking quiet, but the kind that happens when everyone knows they just witnessed something ugly and no one wants to be next. Lila Bennett, Dr. Thorne's star student in the front row, glanced at Jalen's paper. She saw question 5. Her eyes widened slightly. She recognized the structure. That wasn't a high school problem. That was a graduate-level optimization with multivariable constraints. The kind of question designed to make people quit. Dr. Thorne sat at her desk, crossed her legs, and watched Jalen like a cat watching a mouse walk toward a trap. Jalen read the paper, all 5 questions. Then he read question 5 again, and again. For a stretch of stillness, he didn't move, didn't write, didn't seem to breathe. Dr. Thorne's lips curled. There it was, the freeze, the proof. She was already composing the email to the vice principal in her head, words like overwhelmed, misplaced, and better suited for a supportive environment. Then Jalen opened his composition notebook. Not the test paper, the notebook. He picked up his pencil and started writing. Not fast, not frantic, steady, like a surgeon making the first incision. The room was silent except for pencils scratching paper. But something was different about Jalen's scratching. It was continuous. No pausing, no erasing, no going back. In a short time he put his pencil down, closed the notebook, and folded his hands on the desk. He was the first one finished. Dr. Thorne noticed. She stood up from her desk, walked to the back corner, and looked down at his notebook. What she saw made her face do something it had never done in all her years of teaching. It went completely blank, like someone had pulled the plug on every expression she owned. She stared at the page for several long seconds. Then she closed the notebook and pushed it back toward him. "Interesting approach, Jalen. We'll see how it holds up when I grade it properly." She walked away, heels clicking on the floor, back straight, jaw tight. She didn't look at him again for the rest of the period. But Lila saw Dr. Thorne's face in that moment, and for the first time all semester, Lila Bennett wasn't sure her teacher was the smartest person in the room. The question now was simple. Would Dr. Thorne give Jalen the grade he earned, or would she find a way to bury it? The next morning, Jalen found his graded test in the return pile. He flipped to question 5. Red ink. 92 out of 100. 8 points deducted. The note read, "Method unclear. Did not follow the standard approach. Partial credit only." Jalen stared at those words. Method unclear. He had used modular arithmetic, a technique that avoids assumptions the standard method requires. His answer was correct. His method was very valid. It was actually shorter and more reliable than the textbook approach. But it wasn't Dr. Thorne's way. And in her classroom, her way was the only way. Jalen folded the paper, put it in his bag, and didn't say a word. That afternoon, Dr. Thorne posted her model solution for question 5 on the class bulletin board. She pinned it neatly, typed and formatted, her name at the top. A clean presentation. This is the standard methodology. All future exams will be graded exclusively on this method. That note wasn't for the class. It was for Jalen. But here is where Dr. Thorne made her mistake. Not a small one, a devastating one. During lunch, Jalen stood in front of the bulletin board. He read Dr. Thorne's solution line by line, step by step. He read it the way a surgeon reads an X-ray, not looking for what was there, but for what shouldn't be. And he found it. Step 3. Dr. Thorne's solution assumed that the variable x was always greater than 0 across the entire domain. She never tested the boundary. She never checked what happens when x equals 0. She just assumed it couldn't and built her entire answer on that assumption. But Jalen knew better. He had seen this exact trap before. In an online forum, a graduate student had posted a similar problem. The thread had argued about it for some time. Jalen had spent time in his grandmother's kitchen working through every edge case. He knew what happened at the boundary. When x equals 0, the function behaves completely differently. Dr. Thorne's optimal answer doesn't just become inaccurate. It becomes wrong. Flat out. Provably. Mathematically wrong. Jalen opened his notebook. Right there, standing in front of the bulletin board, he wrote a clean correction on a single page. First, he identified the hidden assumption. Step 3 assumes x is always positive. That's never proven. It's just assumed. Second, he constructed a specific boundary case, a concrete set of values where x equals 0. Simple numbers, easy to check, undeniable. Third, he showed the consequence. Plug those values into Dr. Thorne's final answer. The result was worse than a basic approach. Her optimal solution was actually inferior at the boundary. Fourth, he solved it correctly using modular arithmetic, the same method she had deducted points for. On the page, his solution was clean, elegant, and correct in every case, including the one Dr. Thorne missed. He tore the page from his notebook and pinned it right next to her solution on the bulletin board. Then he picked up his bag and walked away. No announcement. No drama, just the math, side by side for anyone who cared to look. By midday they were looking. It started with 2 students from the honors track. They stopped, read both solutions, and pulled out their calculators. Soon they called their friends over. By the end of lunch there were many students crowded around the bulletin board, checking, rechecking, whispering. One by one the same realization hit. Jalen was right. Dr. Thorne was wrong. Lila Bennett pushed through the crowd. She read Dr. Thorne's solution, read Jalen's correction. Then she sat on the hallway bench and did the boundary calculation herself, from scratch. Her face moved through confusion, verification, and then something she clearly didn't enjoy feeling. The realization that she, Dr. Thorne's best student, hadn't caught it either. She looked up from her notes and said quietly to no one in particular, "He's right." By the end of the day, the entire math department had heard about the bulletin board. Students, teachers, even a few kids from other departments who just wanted to see what the fuss was about. Then Dr. Thorne found out. She walked to the bulletin board later that afternoon. The hallway was empty by then. She read Jalen's correction. Her eyes moved across the page once, twice. Her jaw tightened. She unpinned both papers, hers and his, folded them together and carried them to her office. Not long after, Jalen was called in. Dr. Thorne sat behind her desk, door closed, hands folded, voice controlled but barely. "Jalen, what you did today was unacceptable." Jalen said nothing and waited. "Publicly posting a so-called correction to a teacher's work is not how we do things at Whitfield. If you had concerns, you could come to me privately. What you did was disrespectful, arrogant, and disruptive to the learning environment." Jalen looked at her, calm and steady. "I didn't correct you, Dr. Thorne. I just showed the boundary case. The math doesn't care who wrote it." 5 words landed like a hammer. "The math doesn't care who wrote it." Dr. Thorne stared at him. Several seconds of silence passed. "You may go." Jalen stood, walked to the door, opened it. He didn't slam it. He didn't look back. He just left. But in that office, behind that closed door, something had shifted. Dr. Thorne knew, and Jalen knew she knew. The math stayed on the bulletin board through the day. Many students confirmed it. Lila Bennett confirmed it. The evidence was already out. Dr. Thorne could take down the paper. She could silence the conversation. But she couldn't take down the truth. And now the question was what she would do with it. Accept it, or make Jalen pay for it. Dr. Thorne didn't accept it. She escalated. Most people, when they get caught making a mistake, get quiet. They adjust. Maybe they learn something. Not Dr. Thorne. The bulletin board incident didn't humble her. It threatened her. And threatened people don't retreat. They attack. Soon after, she rewrote the grading policy for her class. New rule, effective immediately. All exam answers must follow the prescribed standard methodology taught in class. Alternative methods, regardless of whether they produce the correct answer, will receive partial credit at best, 0 credit at worst. She announced it with a straight face and called it academic consistency. Every student in the room knew who that rule was for. It was a cage built specifically for Jalen Brooks. His greatest strength, the ability to see problems differently, to find faster and more elegant paths, was now officially a liability. If he solved the problem his way, he would lose points. If he solved it Dr. Thorne's way, he would be forcing himself to use a method he knew was sometimes inferior, and she wasn't done. She reassigned Jalen to a group project with the 2 lowest performing students in the class. The project counted for a significant portion of the semester grade. No matter how brilliant Jalen's individual work was, his group score would drag him down. Then came the email, sent to Vice Principal Dr. Marcus Lang. Subject line: concerns regarding student conduct, Jalen Brooks. In it, she described Jalen as consistently disruptive, resistant to established academic protocols, and exhibiting behavioral patterns that suggested he may not be suited for the advanced track. She recommended he be moved to a standard mathematics course for his own benefit. She never mentioned the bulletin board. She never mentioned her error. The email read like genuine concern from a dedicated teacher. If you didn't know the context, you would believe every word. The system was closing around Jalen, and it was closing fast. His test scores started dropping, not because he was getting answers wrong, but because he was getting docked for incorrect methodology. His grade slid from a solid A toward a B. Whispers started circulating among students. Maybe the bulletin board thing was a fluke. Maybe he just got lucky on that one problem. I heard Dr. Thorne said he has attitude issues. That's how it works. You don't have to destroy someone with one blow. You just keep cutting. Small, precise, daily cuts. And eventually people stop seeing the blood. They just see someone falling behind. Only one person in that classroom knew the full truth: Lila Bennett. She had verified it herself. She knew his method was sound. She knew the new grading policy was a weapon, and she wrestled with that knowledge every single day. Then one evening after class, Lila did something small, something that changed everything. She left her personal study binder on Jalen's desk. Didn't say a word, no note, no eye contact, just the binder, open to a specific page where she had solved the latest exam problem using Jalen's modular arithmetic method. Her handwriting, her work, his approach. The message was silent, but clear. I checked. You're right. I know what she's doing. Jalen found the binder, read the page, closed it, and left it on her desk the next morning, exactly where she would find it. Nothing said between them. Nothing needed. But the clock was ticking. Open classroom day was approaching. Dr. Thorne was preparing her showcase lesson for Founders Hall. Hundreds of seats, parents, board members, Vice Principal Lang, department faculty, every math student in the school, and one special guest, Dr. Elena Vargas, parent board representative and former PhD in applied mathematics. This was Dr. Thorne's annual coronation, the day she proved she was the best teacher in the building, and this year, she had something extra planned, a challenge problem designed by her. Projected on the big screen at the end of her demonstration, she would invite students to solve it live in front of the entire audience. The problem had two layers, an outer layer that looked familiar, and an inner layer hiding a trap. She had already coached Lila privately on the trick at the final step. Lila would solve it. The audience would applaud. Dr. Thorne would beam. And Jalen? If he tried, and she was counting on him trying, he would fail. Publicly, in front of hundreds of people. But there was one thing Dr. Thorne didn't account for. The trap inside her own problem relied on the exact same boundary assumption she had gotten wrong on the bulletin board, the exact same blind spot, and modular arithmetic, the method she had been punishing Jalen for all semester, solved it perfectly. Okay, wait, I have to stop here because this woman literally built a whole trap to destroy this kid. And the one method that solves it, the exact one she's been punishing him for. That's not irony. That's something deeper. So now the question becomes, does Jalen know what's coming? And Lila, she knows the trick. She knows she's standing right in the middle of this. What side will she choose? In the lead-up to open classroom day, the pressure was building like steam in a sealed pipe. Dr. Thorne wasn't letting up. If anything, she was pressing harder. Every class became another opportunity to remind Jalen where she thought he belonged. One Monday, weekly exam, 5 questions on differential applications. Jalen solved every one correctly, but he used his own method on 2 of them. Cleaner, faster, fewer steps. Grade 78. The note in red ink. Consistently fails to follow prescribed methodology. Points deducted. It was the first time in his life Jalen Brooks had scored below 80 on a math test. Not because he was wrong, because he was right in the wrong way. Dr. Thorne handed back his paper without looking at him. She didn't need to. The grade said everything she wanted to say. That same week, Coach Harlan Reed, Dr. Thorne's assistant and loyal shadow, gave Jalen a homework assignment on number theory. As he handed it over, he smirked. This one's a beast. Most students need at least a couple of hours. Don't feel bad if you can't finish it. Jalen finished it quickly during lunch, sitting on a hallway bench with his composition notebook on his knee. Coach Reed collected the homework the next day. He flipped through Jalen's pages. His face twitched, just for a second. Then he did something strange. Before handing the stack to Dr. Thorne, he pulled out his phone and took a photo. Quick, quiet, almost hidden. Jalen didn't see it, but the camera saw everything. One Wednesday. Dr. Thorne called Jalen to the board in front of the class. She gave him a problem she knew he would solve differently. He picked up the marker, and started writing. His method? Modular arithmetic, clean reduction, elegant steps. Halfway through, Dr. Thorne cut him off. "Thank you, Jalen, but let's see the correct approach." She called Lila up. Lila solved the same problem using Dr. Thorne's method. Same answer. Twice as many steps, but it was the approved way. Dr. Thorne smiled at Lila, turned to the class. "This is what proper methodology looks like." "Thank you, Lila." Jalen walked back to his seat. The message was loud and clear. In this room, being right wasn't enough. You had to be right the way Dr. Thorne wanted. And if you were Jalen Brooks, even that might not be enough. That night something cracked. Jalen sat in his grandmother's kitchen, notebook open, pencil in hand. But he wasn't writing. He was just sitting there, staring at a blank page. For the first time in a long while, Jalen Brooks didn't want to do math. Grandma May noticed. She always noticed. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't push. She just set a plate of food in front of him and sat down across the table. "You know what your granddaddy used to say?" Jalen looked up. "They can change the rules, they can't change the answer." Simple words, nothing fancy. But something behind Jalen's eyes shifted. He looked at the blank page, picked up his pencil, and started writing. That night, he did something he had never done before. He went back through every exam Dr. Thorne had given that semester and solved each one using her prescribed method, step by step, exactly the way she demanded. And he found something. On several of the most recent exams, Dr. Thorne's standard method produced answers that were approximations, close but not precise. Rounding errors buried inside the process. Small enough to pass, not small enough to be correct. Jalen's method on every single one produced exact answers. No rounding, no approximation. Clean. He documented everything in his notebook, page after page, her method versus his. The differences circled in pencil. He didn't know it yet, but that notebook was about to become the most important object in the room. Meanwhile, Lila Bennett was dealing with her own storm. Dr. Thorne had pulled her aside after class. Private meeting. Door closed. "Lila, for Open Classroom Day, I've designed a special challenge problem. You're going to solve it on stage. I'll walk you through the trick at the final step. It will look spectacular on your college applications." Lila listened, nodded, took notes. But that night, alone in her room, she did something Dr. Thorne never expected. She solved the challenge problem on her own, not using Dr. Thorne's trick, but using Jalen's method, the modular arithmetic approach she had studied from her own binder, the one she had left on his desk. It worked. Faster, cleaner, more elegant, and it didn't need any tricks. Lila sat at her desk for a long time. She folded the paper and put it in her bag. She hadn't decided what to do with it yet, but she knew one thing. The method Dr. Thorne was showcasing as the correct approach had the same blind spot, the same boundary assumption, the same crack in the foundation. And the method she had been watching Dr. Thorne punish all semester was the one that actually held up. On the day of the open classroom demonstration, Founders Hall, filled with hundreds of seats, arranged in a gentle curve facing the stage. A projector mounted on the ceiling, a whiteboard on a rolling stand, a microphone on the podium. The seats filled fast. All the math students filed in first, then the parents, many of them dressed in business casual, holding coffee cups. The school board, seated in the front row with notepads. Vice Principal Dr. Marcus Lang standing by the side door, arms crossed. And Dr. Elena Vargas, parent board representative and former PhD in applied mathematics, in the third row, center. She didn't carry a notepad. She didn't need one. She carried everything in her head. One more person found a seat that morning. Back row, right corner, wearing the nicest dress she owned. Grandma May Brooks. She didn't tell Jalen she was coming. She just showed up, sat down, and folded her hands in her lap. Dr. Thorne walked onto the stage promptly at the start. Black blazer, hair-pinned, confident smile. She tapped the microphone once and began. The demonstration ran smoothly, textbook perfect. She walked through problem-solving strategies, called on students for quick answers, showed off her teaching method. The audience nodded along. Parents were impressed. Board members scribbled approving notes. Then she reached the final segment, the one she had been planning for some time. She clicked the projector. A problem appeared on the big screen. Large font, clean layout, 2 layers of constraints wrapped around an optimization core. Dr. Thorne turned to the audience with a warm, practiced smile.
Now this is something special. I designed this problem to push our very best. I'd like to invite any student who feels confident to come up and try right here, right now, in front of everyone. This is what advanced mathematics at Whitfield looks like. Her eyes swept the student section. They passed over Jalen quickly, but on purpose. A flicker of a smile at the corner of her mouth. The trap was set. The stage was lit. Hundreds of people were watching. And somewhere in the back row, Grandma May Brooks tightened her hands in her lap. She didn't understand a thing on that screen, but she understood the look on her grandson's face. He was ready. But was he ready for what Dr. Thorne had planned? Or for what was about to go wrong with it? Leela raised her hand, just like Dr. Thorne planned. Wonderful. Lila, come on up. Dr. Thorne's voice was warm, proud, the voice of a teacher watching her masterpiece unfold. Lila walked to the stage, picked up the marker, and faced the whiteboard. Hundreds of people leaned in. Lila started writing. Step 1, solid. Step 2, clean. Step 3, the setup for the final move. Then she stopped. A brief silence. Her marker hovered over the board. The audience held still. Dr. Thorne's smile tightened just barely. She gave Lila a small nod. The signal. Use the trick. Finish it. Lila didn't use the trick. She went back to step 3, drew a line underneath it, and started writing something new. A different approach. A modular arithmetic framework. Clean variable transformation. Boundary case acknowledged and solved. Jalen's method, right there on stage, in front of hundreds of people. Dr. Thorne's face froze. Not anger, not yet. Confusion, like watching your own reflection do something you didn't tell it to. Lila finished, put the marker down, and stepped back. Her answer was correct, but the method was not what Dr. Thorne had rehearsed with her. Not even close. Dr. Thorne recovered fast. Years of teaching had given her that skill. She stepped to the microphone, smooth and controlled. Very creative, Lila, but that's not quite the standard approach. Let me show everyone the more rigorous method. She picked up the eraser and wiped Lila's work off the board. Every line gone in seconds. Then, she started fresh. Her method. Her way. Step 1, Step 2, Step 3, the standard assumption. Step 4, the trick. Step 5, final answer. She turned to the audience, confident and satisfied. And that is the correct approach. But it wasn't. Step 3, the same step, the same assumption. The variable x is always greater than 0. She didn't check the boundary. She didn't test the edge case, the exact same mistake she had made on the bulletin board weeks earlier. Her solution looked perfect, sounded perfect. Hundreds of people had no reason to doubt it. But 3 people in that room knew. Jalen, sitting in the student section with his composition notebook Owen, had spotted it the moment the problem appeared on screen. He had been waiting. Lila, back in her seat, hands folded, heart pounding, knew, because she had already solved it the right way. The work Dr. Thorne just erased was the proof, and Dr. Elena Vargas, 3rd row center, tilted her head slightly. Her eyes narrowed. She didn't need a notebook. She saw it.
3 people, 1 truth, and not one of them had said a word. Dr. Thorne smiled at the audience, completely unaware. The question hanging in the air was so thick you could almost touch it. Who would break the silence? And what would it cost them? Dr. Thorne was already moving on, straightening her notes, preparing her closing remarks. In her mind, the demonstration was a triumph. Problem presented, problem solved, audience impressed. Another flawless open classroom day. Then Jalen raised his hand. It wasn't dramatic. He didn't stand up, he didn't wave. He just lifted his right hand steady and calm, like he was asking permission to sharpen a pencil. Dr. Thorne saw it. Her eyes locked on him for a half-second. Something flickered across her face. Irritation, maybe, or something deeper. She could have ignored him, moved on to closing remarks, thanked the audience, ended the show. But hundreds of people saw his hand. Parents, board members, Dr. Lang, Dr. Vargas. If she ignored him now, in front of everyone, it would look exactly like what it was. So she smiled. The thinnest smile in the room.
Yes, Jalen. Dr. Thorne, I think there might be an issue with step 3. May I come up and show it on the board?
Silence. Not the polite kind. The sharp kind. The kind where hundreds of people stopped breathing at the same time. Dr. Thorne tilted her head. Her voice came through the microphone, sweet as poison. Jalen, this is a demonstration, not a debate. But she paused, looked at the audience, calculated. Sure. Come on up. Show us what you think you found. She leaned on that word. Think, like a knife pressed flat against skin. Not cutting yet, just letting you feel the edge. Jalen stood up, stepped past the other students, walked to the aisle. Every head in the auditorium turned to follow him. The walk from his seat to the stage felt like a mile. He stepped onto the stage, picked up the marker, and faced the whiteboard. Dr. Thorne's solution still written across it in her neat, confident handwriting. Then he turned and looked at the audience. Hundreds of faces staring back. And he froze, not because of the math. He knew the math cold. He had known it since the moment the problem appeared on the screen. He had known it since the bulletin board, since his grandmother's kitchen, since a small amount textbook, and a cracked spine and time spent teaching himself what no one else would teach him. He froze because of what came after. If he wrote what he knew on that board, if he proved the most powerful teacher in the school wrong on her stage, on her day, in front of her audience, there was no going back. He still had to sit in her classroom every day for the rest of the year. She controlled his grades, his recommendations, his future. The marker hovered over the board. Several seconds of nothing. Dr. Thorne saw the hesitation, and she pushed. Take your time, Jalen. This is a very challenging problem. She paused, let the silence stretch, then added softly, but the microphone caught every syllable. No one expects. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. Every person in that room heard what she didn't say. No one expects you to get it. No one expects you to belong here. No one expects anything from you. A murmur rippled through the parents' section. Grandma May, back row right corner, pressed her hands together so hard her knuckles went pale. Jalen stood on that stage, marker in hand. Hundreds of people watching him dangle. Then he looked past the stage lights, past the board members, past Dr. Thorne, all the way to the back row, right corner. He found her, Grandma May. She wasn't nodding, she wasn't waving, she wasn't mouthing words of encouragement. She was just sitting there, looking at him with a face that said one thing, and one thing only. I've watched you carry this your whole life. I'm not going anywhere. Jalen looked at her for a couple of seconds. Then he turned back to the board, uncapped the marker. He didn't find courage from anger. He didn't find it from pride. He found it from the quietest person in the room, a woman in the back row wearing the nicest dress she owned, who never understood a single equation he wrote, but who understood him. Jalen put the marker to the board, and he didn't hesitate again. He wrote the first line. Clean. Steady. The marker didn't shake. He underlined step 3 of Dr. Thorne's solution and drew a small bracket around the assumption. Then next to it, in clear block letters, he wrote, "This assumes the function is always positive across the full domain." He turned to the audience for 1 second. Not for approval, just to make sure they were reading. They were. Every single one of them. Then he went back to the board. He constructed a boundary case, a specific set of values, simple numbers, nothing exotic, where the variable reaches 0. He plugged those values into Dr. Thorne's step 3 and showed line by line what happens to the function at the boundary. It breaks. Not approximately, not arguably, completely. Dr. Thorne's optimal solution at the boundary produces a result that is mathematically worse than doing nothing at all. Her answer doesn't just become inaccurate, it becomes wrong. He wrote Dr. Thorne's final answer on the left side of the board. Then he wrote the correct answer for the boundary case on the right side. 2 numbers side by side. Different. Undeniably, visually, obviously different. No one in the audience needed a math degree to see it. 2 numbers. They didn't match. That was enough. But Jalen wasn't done. He moved to a clean section of the board and solved the entire problem from scratch. Not Dr. Thorne's way. His way. Modular arithmetic. The method Dr. Thorne had called unclear. The method she deducted points for. The method she erased when Lila used it earlier on this same stage. His handwriting was steady. Each step flowed into the next like water finding its path downhill. No hesitation. No crossing out, no going back. Step 1. Reframe the constraint. Instead of assuming the function was always positive, he transformed the variable, so the boundary case was built into the structure from the start. Step 2. Apply the modular framework. Reduce the problem space. Eliminate the noise. Step 3. Bridge the 2 paths. Show that the standard approach and the boundary approach converge to the same answer when, and only when, the assumption is removed. Step 4. Simplify the final expression. 1 line, 4 terms, reduced to its absolute cleanest form. On the left side of the board, Dr. Thorne's solution. Half a page of steps, an assumption buried in the middle. A wrong answer at the boundary. On the right side, Jalen's solution. 4 lines. No assumptions. Correct in every case. He capped the marker, placed it on the tray, turned around and looked at Dr. Thorne. He didn't say a word. The auditorium went silent. Not gradually. Instantly. Like someone had pressed mute on hundreds of people at once. The air conditioning hummed. A chair creaked somewhere in the back. That was it. Dr. Elena Vargas, 3rd row center, was leaning forward. Her eyes moved across the board. Left side, right side, left side again. She was checking, verifying, running the logic in her head the way only someone with a PhD in mathematics can. Then she nodded slowly, once. Vice Principal Dr. Marcus Lang, standing by the side door, uncrossed his arms. He took a half step forward. His face was unreadable, but his posture said everything. He was paying attention now. Lila Bennett in the student section closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were wet. She pressed her lips together and clapped once against her knee. Then again. Quiet. Almost private. A student in the middle section started clapping. Then another, then 5 more. Then the parents, then the board members. It built like a wave, not an explosion. A wave, starting small, growing with every second until hundreds of people were on their feet, and the sound filled Founders Hall, from the stage to the back wall. Jalen stood on the stage. He didn't pump his fist. He didn't bow. He didn't smile. He just stood there. Marker tray behind him, 2 solutions on the board, and hundreds of people standing. Dr. Vargas rose from her seat. She didn't wait for the applause to die. Her voice cut through it. Clear, measured, and loud enough for the entire hall. I want to be clear about what just happened. This student did not simply solve a problem. He identified a foundational error that most graduate students would miss. And his method, the one he used, is more generalizable, more elegant, and more mathematically sound than the standard approach. This is exceptional work. Exceptional. The applause had stopped. Now it was just her voice and hundreds of people listening. I've reviewed PhD dissertations with less rigor than what I just watched a teenager do on a whiteboard. Silence. Every eye in the room moved to Dr. Thorne. She was standing a few feet from Jalen, stage right. Microphone still clipped to her blazer. Hundreds of people, parents, board members, her vice principal, her students, all waiting. Her face was a mask, but the edges were cracking. A muscle in her jaw twitched. Her fingers clasped in front of her pressed white against each other. The microphone was live. The room was silent. Whatever she said next would be heard by every person in that auditorium. She looked at the board, at her solution on the left, at Jalen's solution on the right, at the two numbers that didn't match. Then she looked at Jalen. Jalen is a very determined student. That was it. That was all she could give. Not brilliant, not talented, not exceptional. The word Dr. Vargas had just used. Determined, the smallest, safest, most reluctant word she could find that still sounded like acknowledgement. But it was acknowledgement. Pulled from between her teeth like a confession, on a microphone in front of hundreds of witnesses. And everyone in that room heard what she couldn't say. They heard it in the pause before determined. They heard it in the way her voice flattened. They heard it in the words she chose, and the many words she didn't. Jalen looked at her, and he did something no one expected. He nodded, a small, quiet nod, respectful, the kind of gesture you give someone, even when they've never given it to you. Then he stepped off the stage, walked back to his seat, sat down, opened his composition notebook, and started writing down his solution. Like it was just another day. The auditorium was still buzzing, students whispering, parents leaning to each other, board members exchanging glances. But one person wasn't making a sound. Back row, right corner. Grandma May Brooks stood up. She didn't clap. She didn't cheer. She didn't call his name. She just stood there, hands clasped against her chest, tears running down her face without a sound. She didn't understand a single line he wrote on that board. But she understood every face in that room, and for the first time in a long time, those faces were looking at her grandson the way she had always looked at him. Like he mattered. The auditorium emptied slowly. People lingered. Conversations hummed in the aisles. But behind the noise, three things happened that would change everything. The first happened in the hallway outside Founders Hall. Dr. Elena Vargas walked directly to Vice Principal Dr. Marcus Lang. No small talk, no pleasantries. She handed him a single sheet of paper. Notes she had written during the demonstration. Her handwriting was sharp and precise. The notes contained three things: Jalen's method broken down step by step, the exact location of the error in Dr. Thorne's solution, and a professional assessment written by a woman who had reviewed doctoral theses for many years. One sentence was underlined. This student's methodology is at the level of a first-year graduate researcher, not a high school sophomore. Dr. Lang read it, folded the paper, placed it in his vest pocket, and said two words: "Thank you." That paper would sit on his desk by the next school day, and it would not sit there alone. The second thing happened by the water fountain near the east exit. Lila Bennett found Jalen. It was the first time she had ever spoken to him directly. She didn't ease into it. "That method you used, the modular approach, I've been studying it. You're right, it's better, and I'm sorry I didn't say something sooner." Jalen looked at her. No resentment, no bitterness. You left your binder on my desk a while back. That wasn't nothing. Lila held his gaze for a moment, nodded once, and walked away. Nothing more needed to be said. The third thing happened shortly after, quietly. By email, Vice Principal Dr. Marcus Lang sent a message to every teacher in the mathematics department. The subject line was simple: grading policy, immediate revision. The email was 4 sentences long. The one that mattered read, "A correct solution arrived at through a valid mathematical method must be graded on its correctness, not on its conformity to a single prescribed approach. Effective immediately." The rule that was built to cage Jalen Brooks was gone, and his transcript, several exams previously marked down for incorrect methodology, were regraded. New scores posted. Final grade, A. Dr. Thorne read that email alone in her office. Door closed, lights off. She wasn't fired. She wasn't publicly reprimanded. The system moved the way systems always move, slowly, quietly, with a memo. But the cage she built was dismantled, permanently. That evening, Jalen sat in his grandmother's kitchen. The same kitchen where he taught himself calculus while still very young. The same table where he spent time cracking a problem from a small amount textbook. The same chair where he almost gave up not long before. His composition notebook was open. He was already working on a new problem. The email from Dr. Lang confirming his regraded scores sat on the table next to his plate, still unopened. Grandma May set a plate of food in front of him. She stood there for a moment, watching him write. "I didn't understand a single thing you wrote on that board today, but I understood every face in that room. They saw you, baby. They finally saw you." Jalen looked up and smiled, the first real smile in some time. Then he went back to writing. May didn't say anything else. She turned to the sink and started washing dishes. The kitchen was quiet except for the scratch of his pencil and the sound of running water. Some moments don't need words. This was one of them. Dr. Vivian Thorne still teaches at Whitfield Preparatory Academy. She has not publicly commented on what happened that afternoon, but in the next term, for the first time in many years, her grading policy was permanently changed. Method flexibility, scored on correctness. No exceptions. Jalen Brooks finished the year with the highest GPA in the mathematics department. He received multiple university scholarship offers well before his final year. Sometimes the people who tell you to know your limits are the ones who haven't found theirs yet. Honestly, this one hit different. A kid teaching himself advanced math from a small amount book and still getting treated like he's nothing. That broke something a little. I just wanted people to see him, really see him. That's why I told this story. If this story made you feel something, if you've ever been the person in the back row, or if you've ever been handed a paper face down like it was too good for you, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes knowing that someone else fought that fight is enough to keep going. Like, share, drop your story.